Star Wars Empire at War Fall of the Republic version 1.2 is coming very soon. In today's video, I'm going to be covering every single change that comes in this patch, from the big changes first, all the way down to the smallest changes. These range from new Galactic Conquests, new models, new textures, a completely revamped Skirmish game mode for space and ground combat, as well as a release date on when this patch comes out for you guys to play for yourselves. So without any further ado, let's dive right into the video. So one of the first biggest changes is a completely new campaign called Operation Dirge's Lance. Unlike most other Fall of the Republic campaigns, this one starts you off with heavily built up forces and pits you straight into the action. Just starting the campaign, you can see you have a plethora of Venator Star Destroyers as well as invincible Dreadnoughts, and to top it all off, you also have a Mandator class Star Dreadnought. Other big changes is the addition of extra heroes from the Clone Wars such as Ahsoka Tano and Dirge. Next up, there's been a ton of new models for both space and ground combat. Whilst I can't go through every single one in this video, the biggest ones are the Secutor Star Destroyer in space combat and the A5 Juggernaut on ground combat. But alongside that, there is also a ton of new death animations for the Galleon, all the ISD variants, the Recusant, the Dreadnought Recusant, Golans, and more. So rather than destroying them and then they disappear in a puff of smoke, they actually break down and fall to the planet below. There's also a ton of new fighters and ground units for Galactic Conquest and Skirmish. The NTB-630 bomber is one of the new ships for the Galactic Republic. It's a heavy bomber and can do some serious damage to capital ships if not properly countered. Perhaps I might make a video on this particular starfighter in the future, so if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on it. And finally, for the big changes for Fall of the Republic 1.2, there is a new ground battle skirmish game mode with all new custom maps. Myself and Corey Loses did play a match or two in our live stream a couple of days ago, which you can find in the top right info card right now, but essentially is trying to bring the refined skirmish battle modes in space combat down to ground combat. That meaning maps are symmetrical, so everyone has the same advantage, with plenty of opportunities to cover your side of the map with economic bunkers that give you more income or defensive bunkers that give you more firepower against the enemy. It's an incredibly interesting and well in-depth game mode, which I think will bring a lot of people to ground combat. Myself included have been very critical about ground battles in the past, so seeing these type of game modes is a great step in the right direction for me changing my mind on that. Next up is the medium changes. Skirmish mode in space combat has seen a bunch of changes. First up, 2 upgradable defense stations are now held in front of your space station. The station itself can tech up, but the Golans add an extra defense for your early game, rather than you having to tech up for that extra defense. This is to prevent the enemy from doing an early game rush to your space station because you're a bit behind on income. Usually if the enemy was able to secure 2 more asteroids than you, they could tech up far faster and then rain down on your space station before you could even get off the ground. But with the 2 defense stations which can be upgraded, gives you the early game defense that you need, which gradually falls off in effectiveness as you reach space tech 4 or 5. Other changes in skirmish mode include the research station behind your space station and how it manages all of your income upgrades. So in the past, you had to get space station income upgrades by teching up, and you had to get your asteroid income upgrades by upgrading one of the asteroids themselves. But by doing this, if the enemy was able to wipe out all your asteroids in one lucky go, it essentially meant the end of the game for you because you lose all of your asteroid upgrades in the process. This change gives you the opportunity to come back because you don't lose those asteroid upgrades if you lose all your asteroids in an unlucky event. It has a sizable chunk of hull and shields which is protected against bombing runs and the like. So every time you upgrade your space station to get that income benefit, you have to research them on your research station right afterwards. It does add a lot more steps to the process of earning more income, but it allows players to play more safely without having to lose so much in return. Finally, for Skirmish, the maps have been altered to be more competitive friendly. Atravis Madness, for example, is more symmetrical, so certain teams don't have advantage on the hero station. In the old version of Atravis Madness, the hero station was in the top right side of the map. This gave player 2, who is in the top left side of the map, a much bigger advantage of capturing it over player 1. That's because the space station was much closer to their usual asteroid they'd capture on the map. Now, the space station has been allocated to the center, and 2 extra asteroids have appeared in the top right and the bottom left of the map. These symmetrical changes to skirmish maps haven't been completed yet, but you will see them be applied to every single one of them in the future. There is a new Ascendancy game mode map in skirmish mode, which is much larger than the original, and tons of opportunity to get a lot more income in that map compared to the smaller one. Ascendancy is actually one of my most favorite game modes in Thrawn's Revenge, more so than skirmish mode. So seeing Ascendancy get a little bit more love is really exciting. If you're not familiar with Ascendancy mode and want to know more, perhaps I can make a video covering it. If you want that, let me know in the comments down below. And finally, there are new additions and changes to the anti-fighter and anti-bomber ships. Before, ships like the CR-90 and the LAC just weren't very effective at taking out enemy fighters and bombers. So much so, if you were one of the lucky ones in a faction that had a very effective interceptor, you had to rely on those taking out the enemy starfighters and bombers. Now that has changed. Ships like the CR-90 are now equipped with rapid fire lasers that can shoot down some incoming bombs and missiles, meaning bombers will still be very strong unless you have some countermeasures that is supporting your capital ships. Now more than ever is it more effective to have a stable, well-rounded fleet. If you bring in a capital ship and it's not supported by fighters or corvettes, bombers are going to have a field day stripping its shields and its hardpoints super effectively. Now, ships like the CR-90 and LAC are properly equipped to take down those fighter furballs you see in Skirmish and Galactic Conquest modes when both sides of the team have far too many fighters. So gone are the days of fighters almost seeming like they are unkillable. You can actually see this in action with the little lasers taking out the bombs as they're traveling to their destination, giving you a visual indication that it's actually working and protecting your capital ships. And finally, on to the small changes. First up, accuracy stats have now completely changed. The lighter the gun, the more accuracy it has to smaller ships, but smaller range in return. The larger the gun, the more damage it can do and the further it can travel, but far less accurate to smaller ships compared to capitals. Before, you had to have a much stronger understanding of what type of gun did what, but for those of you who are not super well versed in Star Wars, you can simply just look at the size of the gun now. Smaller guns do less damage overall, but land much more accurately to smaller ships at a smaller range, and larger guns do a lot more damage at a much larger range, but have a much less accuracy, so they're way more suited for capital ships and other larger ships alike. This personally to me is a fantastic change. This simplifies things so much more for players like me who don't know what every single gun does in Empire at War. So when I'm looking through the ships I can build and looking at their descriptions, I can finally look at their loadout and know which ships will fit my fleet accordingly. I really love this change. I think a lot of people are going to like this as well, just because it makes the game a lot more easier to understand. And next up, the AI is smarter in ground battles. They'll retreat when they know they've lost. Before, the AI would just constantly fight relentlessly, even when they had barely any ground units that was definitely not going to secure them the win. That meant players had to search the entire ground map, searching for maybe one ATST to take down so they can win the match. And they can't auto-resolve because it's too risky. They could lose some ground units by doing so. Now, if the AI knows they have no chance of winning the ground battle, they'll actually retreat and save you a lot of time. So goodbye to the ground battles that last anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes, thank God. Alongside that, however, the AI will also attempt to establish landing zones and bases in ground battles before attacking you. Before, it was almost impossible to reach outside of your initial landing zone because the enemy would just immediately start attacking you as soon as you landed. This meant it was really difficult to traverse the map and try and find the best ways to intercept your enemy. Now that won't happen. The AI will set up a proper defense at landing zones so you can attack them there, or they can traverse to you if you've taken too long. This personally is a great change. I can't tell you how many ground battles I had where I just got completely overwhelmed in the first 2 to 3 minutes. But it doesn't stop there. Next up, ground maps in general are being rehauled. Not all of this is done, but the team is working on replacing the messier maps that tend to be a slog to get through. We saw this change start roughly about a year ago when Corey and the team were starting to add mission objectives where you had to hold down a landing zone for a period of time to secure the map. we're starting to see this roll out for all the other maps as well, as long as re-changes to the layout so it's not so difficult to get from point A to point B. Basically, overall, making ground battles are less of a headache and more fun to play. And finally, official maps have been removed completely from the mod maps and special maps in skirmish mode. Finally, after all these years, the original maps are being removed. They didn't really serve much purpose. They really dated the game because it didn't have any of the new features that Thrawn's Revenge and Fall of the Republic actually added. Not to mention, it was also quite confusing to players on whether or not they were playing a new modded map or an old original map. Personally, I think this is a great change. It definitely needed to be done. But that is where we come to all the changes in the upcoming Fall of the Republic 1.2. As mentioned, this update is coming out on the 24th of February, so roughly 2 days after this video comes out. I'll definitely be doing some skirmish modes of this new update on our Twitch channel EcksToo very soon. So if you don't want to miss out on seeing if you can beat me in a 1v1, be sure to follow our Twitch channel and join our Discord so you can get notified on when we're going live. I'll leave links to the Twitch and Discord in the pinned comment down below. But besides that, guys, I've been Charlie, you've been watching EcksToo, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.